This is paragraph 13 of Federalist number 18. It appears that the cities had all the same laws and customs, the same weights and measures, and the same money. So he's talking about the Achaean League. At first he looked at the Amphictyonic League. This is Madison writing as Publius. He's looking at the different ancient leagues to see what their weaknesses and strengths were. He talked about Amphictyonic League, and then now he's talking about Achaean League. And he says the cities had all the same laws, the same weights and measures, and the same money. When he says the same weights and measures, it means for trading purposes, for commercial purposes, the weights and measure system was uniform. Okay, if in, let's say, one place you had, somebody said this is definitely 1 kilogram of rice, you could pretty much know that the bag of rice you got was 1 kilogram, not 950 grams. Okay, so for trade purposes, he says they had that, which is good because you can trust people from other places to trade with, and that's how you grow trade and commerce, and everybody benefits. But how far this effect proceeded from the authority of federal council is left in uncertainty. So we don't know whether the federal council, their federal council, which played the role of their main council that would decide on main things, what they had to do with it, whether they were influential in this or not, whether they were the ones who would monitor this or not. It is said only that the cities were in a manner compelled to receive the same laws and usages. In a way, it says, well, maybe partly it wasn't so much volunteer association. Some of the cities were forced to maybe follow the same laws and rules. When Lacedaemon was brought into the league by Philopoemen, it was attended with an abolition of institutions and laws of Lycurgus and an adoption of those of the Achaeans. So the area, the city, Lacedaemon, was brought into the league by Philopoemen, and they did away with the famous laws of Lycurgus. Lycurgus was a very famous lawgiver of the ancient world, ancient Greece. And you can read about him, look him up when you can. An adoption of those of the Achaeans. The Amphictyonic confederacies, of which she had been a member, left her in the full exercise of her government and her legislation. This circumstance alone proves a very material difference in the genius of the two systems. So he says these Amphictyonic League and Achaean League, there were some differences between them, and that's what we are studying, he says. It is much to be regretted that such imperfect monuments remain of this curious political fabric. Could its interior structure and regular operation be ascertained? I'm sorry, let me read that again. Could its interior structure and regular operation be ascertained, it is probable that more light would be thrown by it on the science of federal government than by any of the like experiments with which we're acquainted. So he in a way says that these two leagues are very important. He says we wish we knew a little bit more about the interior works. Then they would have definitely given us a better example for us to study, because he chooses these two. He says these are some of the better ones, but even the better ones had flaws. But he says we do not have enough information to go with. I wish we did, so that we can make better judgments in shaping our federal government. In the next paragraph, one important fact seems to be witnessed by all the historians who take notice of Achaean affairs. It is that as well after the renovation of the League by Aratus as before its dissolution by the arts of Macedon, there was infinitely more of moderation and justice in the administration of its government, and less of violence and sedition in the people than were to be found in any of the cities existing singly all the prerogatives of sovereignty. And he's saying that there's something interesting about this Achaean League, because after it was renovated, renewed in certain ways, remodeled in certain ways by Aratus, and even before it was destroyed by Macedon, is talking about in different parts of its history, it has been, there was infinitely more of moderation and justice in the administration of its government, and less of violence and sedition in the people. So he says it's been one of the better models for us to look at, because they were not, it seems like they did everything in moderation and right, instead of vicissitudes. Remember, we used the phrase vicissitudes, ups and downs, chaos. So since there was something about it. And then the next line says, the Abbe Mably, the historian we talked about earlier, in his observations on Greece, says that the popular government, which was so tempestuous elsewhere, caused no disorders in the members of the Achaean Republic, because it was there tempered by the general authority and laws of the Confederacy. He says, Abbe Mably, the historian that always encouraged people to learn from history, in his History of Greece says, of all the popular governments, direct democracies that we talked about, where people always gather together instead of sending representatives, that always ends in chaos. He says, this one seems not to have had the same problem. This one was acted in moderation, was relatively a just society. So this Abbe Mably, this historian of Greece, says probably the reason for this is that the cities or the little republics were kind of in a good confederation. That is the reason. So again, Madison, Publius is hinting at the fact that we too, even when we are going to face storms ahead of us, remember it uses the word tempestuous, storm at sea, storm at ocean. It says create chaos where your ship, the ship of state, might drown. That's why he uses the word tempestuous in this sentence, in this paragraph. He says, even if we come across tempestuous situations, our ship of state comes across tempestuous situations, because our system will be framed right, will be put together right, we will survive the storm. And he says maybe that's one of the reasons that the Achaean League did so well, relatively speaking, compared to the others. And the lesson for us Americans is we need to create a strong union, because in the strong union, and if we frame it right, if we write our Constitution right, then if we go through tempestuous situations, if let's say we have a bad president, an awful president, or let's say members of our Congress are awful, they're bought by foreign countries, our Constitution, our government will not sink, we will not drown. We can withstand the situation. We will continue in the next video.